Portugal. There's a
Now, you know, I talk to a wide range of people who can help you move to Portugal. My advice is to go to as many webinars and to talk to as many people for their first session and see what is a fit for you. That's the important thing, is to find out what works for you and your particular circumstances, because one of the most often heard responses to a question about Portugal will be, it depends. And it often depends on you, and it will depend on the circumstances, and it will depend on if the law's just changed, and it will depend on a whole range of things. So keep up to date, go to as many things as you can, and choose the people, you know, find your tribe, find the people you vibe with, find the people who your intuition says, yes, these are the right people to work with. So just go to as many things and speak to as many people as you possibly can, would be my advice to you. But it depends, of course.
Carl rings the bell and a member show to the GMP morning show.
Oh, bless you, Jackie. Yeah, everything is okay. He just kept me a little bit over the finish line of the Munson and the Geezer show, and a late start here. We are okay, and this is quite the unusual show, I have to say. This evening is a prelude to our beef, grief, and relief session, which is a new thing that we're doing, which is a bit of an online support group, and this is the prelude to that, which is it's a space which I think we're unaccustomed to dealing with. Generally speaking, the Good Morning Portugal show in the mornings, it tends to be an upbeat, light-hearted, and positive matter. And more recently, so that we're not entirely sort of, sort of bypassing, positivity bypassing and pollyannering, and not completely ignoring the reality that, of course, there are problems to be dealt with when you move to Portugal as an expat foreigner. As an immigrant, but we don't want our whole show to be dogged and brought down by a catalogue of moaning and challenges and difficulties. And we tend to, I think, to deal with things in quite a light-hearted and positive way. And there is a lot of help available on the Good Morning Portugal show for people facing all sorts of the various stages of their journey to Portugal. And of course, on a Thursday evening, I work with Expats Portugal, and we have a different webinar theme at 7:30 every week, and then the Q&A at 9, where loads of problems can get addressed and positive solutions found. And it's come to my attention, well, it's always been there, but I've not been quite sure what to do about it. And this is a bit of a work in progress, this idea of the beef, grief, and relief session, which will be an offline. Oh, James, this is the live stream part. We will have our closed group promptly at 8:30. But I just wondered if anybody wanted to suggest anything tonight to discuss, any difficulties you've got that you want to talk about in this more open forum. I've got a number of, in terms of what I called this show, the bad news briefing. I've got technical reasons that are threatening tax returns. You may want to know about that. You can vote on these. Are you up to speed with these? And if you're not, shall we take a look at them? The other, in connection with the technical reasons threatening the validation of your invoices on the portal. And this is a place to deal with those sorts of Portugal pains, being here and struggling with some of the inevitabilities of the bureaucracy and so on, just like Portuguese people do. Let's name it, let's claim it. Let's do something about it this evening, here on air for the next 20 minutes or so, and then for an hour or so thereafter at 8:30 in an online group. And I think we'll go to our, for those of you who've been there before, we'll use our usual, James, you were asking the question, the Google Meet. So you've got the link for that, and I will make sure that everybody who's here who wants to join us has that, and you can always WhatsApp me on 913-590-303. So there you go, you do know. Fantastic. Mike's here as well. So yeah, we've got technical reasons threatening the tax return deadline. I might go into that in just a moment because that's some useful information, but it also might prompt people to expose any difficulties they've got that they want help with around that, because it is very, very challenging. I think it is for me personally. Immigrations agencies, new intake already putting in for transfers. So some of the new staff at IMA are wanting transfers already. That might be one to look at as well. And Portuguese experts talk up threat of bird flu. there's another thing. It's like, oh God, really? Which I thought was quite an interesting article. And we might have time to take a look at that as well. So yes, Jackie, I don't know what's exactly prompted that. And maybe it was because we were late or something you heard whilst I was talking to the Portuguese a little bit earlier on. JMC, nice to see you. Portuguese, I think, with the boa noite, rapaziada. What's your advice to us as foreigners when we face problems here in Portugal? One solution, I think, Mike nailed it this morning, is we could call our group Wine and Wine, and that's what Portuguese wine, W-I-N-E, is for, to help alleviate and lubricate certain awkward situations in the toing and froing of Portuguese life, especially around the bureaucracy. Doctor, it hurts on the back. Next time, remove the hang hook before you dress your coat. I think that's a good traditional Portuguese joke there. Thank you, JMC, for that Portuguese dad joke, trying to lighten the mood tonight on the bad news briefing. It's as if we can't be negative here with material like that. Thank you, JMC. That was you. And I think we started off with Mike's idea there, didn't we? That's what Portuguese wine is for. And then, as you quite rightly say there, James, we went on to Wine and Wine, which I think is a great idea. You've also posited in the chat tonight, I finally worked my way through IMT and have my official Portugal driver's license. There's some good news. So it's now officially a former pain in the ass. Isn't that nice to celebrate? And isn't it amazing? You've got we had some wise guys in the chat this morning, didn't we, say getting a driving license is easy in Portugal. It was for me, but it isn't always, that's for sure, for some people. So let's take a look at the technical reasons threatening the tax deadline. I don't know if you know about this thing of validating. It's got me panicking, and will have me begging later to Mrs. M to see if she'll do this, because she did it for me last year when I got in a flap about it. Technical reasons then are preventing the tax-paying public from getting some tax relief. This is on the Portugal News website. Technical reasons are preventing taxpayers from validating expenses for income tax on the e-Fatura portal. Maybe we'll do a whole special about going into the e-Fatura portal, the Finanças portal. The deadline ends this Tuesday, tomorrow. ECO has already questioned the Ministry of Finance about the cause of this error and is considering extending the period for registering invoices and is awaiting a response. I think that's happened before now, isn't it? So everybody waits until the end of the year. This is what happens with tax deadlines, isn't it? Then they crash the website. Actually, that's not a bad strategy. Not that I would suggest something like that. If the government does not extend the deadline, you only have until this Tuesday, the 25th, to validate the invoices. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, and I've given you a new thing to worry about, this is something that is available to all tax-paying citizens in Portugal, to validate your spending such that you get relief against your tax bill, against a number of accounting or spending headings, which include shopping and going to the mechanics, the hairdressers, the vets, all sorts of things. If you fail to do this step, up to a certain amount there, so it's basically tax relief, but you have to validate your spending. It's not just automatic. If you fail to do this step, you will not benefit from all the deductions to the collection when settling accounts with the tax authority, the AT. That is a significantly less refund may be paid, or even tax may have to be paid. To validate invoices, the taxpayer must access the Nota Fiscal Paulista portal. And what is that named after somebody? Or is it... Okay, no, that's the technical description of it. But just it sounded like a street that was named after somebody. Paulista, the Paulista portal, and enter the authentication data, which are the same as those used across the Federal Revenue portal. Then you must consult the invoices that appear pending. See, even the description of it is complicated, let alone doing the thing itself. Highlighted at the top of the page, and finish filling out the form by assigning them to each of the 13 available categories. Here we go. Health, education, homes, real estate, car repairs. Oh, rent. Okay, so you can get tax relief on your rentals. Car repairs, motorcycle repairs, restaurants and accommodation, hairdressers, veterinary activities, monthly passes, gyms, newspapers and magazines. There's also an other option which should be used for general and family expenses such as supermarket expenses. There are invoices that already appear automatically categorized, but others remain pending. Therefore, you should check them to ensure that all deductions are taken full advantage of. See, we are tax collectors, aren't we? Of our own taxes, and tax administrators of our own taxes, but we're not getting paid to do so. For example, it says here, supermarket bills usually almost appear as pending, as do toll or parking bills. In this case, you should select the other category. Should we make it as complicated as possible so people don't get their tax relief? Restaurant receipts are also often outstanding. To correctly, well, anyway, do you know what? Rather than befuddle you any more than I have done already, perhaps, I will give you the link to this, which is going to take you to that site if you want to do that. Okay, so there you go. That's there now. I think we've got some questions already. Old farts whining. I'm in. Give us a cup. Okay. It was only 2 years for the license. And OLP, thank you, OLP, for being here. And thank you for your support as well. Really appreciate it as a Portugal Club member. Gemini also back here. Can see you in the morning as well, Gemini. I don't think the Munson and the Geezer was for you necessarily, as it's not for many people. It's not everybody's cup of tea, that. Good evening, Portugal, from Leela as well. Wine and wine. Is that posh talk for booze and bitch? It is really, isn't it? James, I heard if you're over 60, it could be a problem. It can be more complicated, but I think it's changed since James originally tried. He says here, not really. It was mostly getting documentation for Portugal that doesn't exist in California and managing that long distance from Portugal and several other things. The age was just that I had to do all of that rather than a relatively easy exchange, I think, available to the young ones. Now, if you go to the most recent motoring special on Expats Portugal, that is addressed. And if you join the ACP via Expats Portugal, they can help you with the exchange as well and give you some advice on that. All right, let's move on. Should we go to don't miss your Portuguese personal tax deadlines? That seems far too positive. Let's keep moaning and cover the particular news item from the Portugal resident about how people want a transfer from IMA. When I've spoken to Gilda most Thursday nights recently, she's been very positive about the trajectory of IMA. So as with everything, take this with a pinch of salt and do what you've got to do from your own personal point of view. But I think, as I was saying about, getting views from across the spectrum when it comes to professional services and, well, everything that you need basically for moving to Portugal. Hear quite a few opinions, pinch of salt, see what you gravitate towards, and choose from a good array. Expose yourself to a good array of ideas and opinions without it getting too awkward or difficult or negative. Anyway, let's go see what is happening over at IMO at the moment. This just posted today on the Portugal Resident, and a nice new bright, it's not night mode or dark mode, is it? The Portugal Resident have gone for full-on bright daytime mode here, any time of day. Union blames absence of consistent immigration policy. Oh, while immigrants continue to complain about the service, or rather lack of it, at IMA, the Agency for Integration, Migration and Asylum, the Portuguese Union of Migration Technicians claims that most of the agency's new intake are already putting in for transfers. I've got another jingle for that. Sip of tea. Indeed, the constant government reassurances. Oh, no, hold on. I missed a paragraph here. Such is the level of confusion, the challenges of facing endless queues of foreigners every day, queues that start forming the night before. That must be miserable, let's face it, for everyone concerned. The IMA staff end up asking to be transferred to other organizations. STM has said in a statement, I believe that's their union, is it not? Indeed, the constant government reassurances that they will be recruiting more people stand for very little on this basis, as most of them will also end up wanting to leave, says the union. The dismal assessment follows answers given by IMA's president, Pedro Portugal Gaspar, to the Committee on Constitutional Affairs, Rights, Freedoms and Guarantees last week. Mr. Gaspar explained that IMA's current staff, comprising 674 people, is just 2% higher than in October 2023, when the institution was created after CEF, the Foreigners and Borders Agencies, and the High Commission for Migration were abolished. Inheriting a heavy legacy of unfinished business, not least 400,000 applications for residency from immigrants from all corners of the globe, IMA's president admitted that many staff were opting to leave the agency while those of a certain age were retiring. That certain age being retirement age, presumably. In the meantime, the migratory phenomenon is here to stay, and the different geopolitical movements, who doesn't like a geopolitical movement first thing in the morning, combined with climate and economic changes, are only strengthening the phenomenon, says STM today, meaning the stress on IMA can only increase. What do you think? What is the solution for this? I mean, do they relax things? Do they just come up with a straightforward no, or sort of raise the bar so they don't have so much work to do to make things less stressful on their own front line, which would be unfair, of course, to some people wanting to come into the country. This is an awkward situation for sure, isn't it? And one where morale is very important, where it also seems to be deeply challenged at the moment. Little by little, IMA is becoming just a service organization with no concern for migration policies or strategies, let alone integration. So they're just being functional, appears to be the comment there from the union. STM is very concerned about the end of the mission to recover backlogs in the legislation of immigrants since having allocated all IMA staff to this task. Contrary to what was planned, we fear that in June, we will once again have a very high number of backlogs in other areas, the union's statement adds. So they did have light at the end of the tunnel, it would appear. And when the backlog was cleared, they could move on to more strategic work, but they are suspicious, I think, of that. The Porto outlet, for example, just cannot cope. It has 10 members of staff, only 6 of which are available to see people without a prior booking. Immigrants affected by this level of service say the IMA website is also no help at all. Emails, calls, they are simply never answered. It makes you glad, doesn't it? If you've sorted that out and you're basically home and dry here in Portugal, it makes you feel very glad and sympathetic for the plight of people still trying to go through the process there. So there you go. Is that a problem for anyone here? And can we help? No, I think regulation quotas are the way. As what to make it more difficult, JMC, to slash the backlog. That'll be one way of dealing with it from your point of view, if I've understood you correctly there. Okay. Is bird flu, anyone? I do like to share a Natasha Don story, so I'll do that, and her suspicion around such matters, which I always found very helpful during the pandemic time, as one sort of questioning voice, question everything. And she's certainly somebody who did that and trod quite a very considered path, I think, through some of the challenges. And I've got to say, it feels like we're in that same situation again as we were in the pandemic, where 2 things that struck me about the pandemic is like, oh God, what now? And what are we being told to do now? And oh, this is going to divide people. And it feels like we're right back there, doesn't it? What now? This is going to divide people. Exactly. The tone of world events right now as well. President of Public Health Society and former Director of Health warn of new epidemic pandemic. Just in case a migration and taxation wasn't enough for you this evening. Oh, just going back to migration for a problem. We have space, but services must grow accordingly. Okay, so increase the number of staff. We do have space, you're saying, here in Portugal for the people who want to come here, says JMC. Right, so back to the Portuguese experts who are talking up the threat of bird flu. 5 years after the first cases of coronavirus that caused COVID-19 were confirmed in Portugal, 2 Portuguese experts have been giving their thoughts on new threats on the horizon. I bet these are a couple of rays of sunshine. Public health specialist Francisco Jorge is worried about a possible virulent mutation of the H5N1 bird flu virus that may make the jump to... This is very familiar, isn't it? Affecting humans. Former Director of Health, Graça Freitas, believes we are definitely... She was a prophet of doom as well, wasn't she, in the last lot? We are definitely going to have another pandemic. Okay, is what she says. But this time, largely due to the results of policies during COVID, things will be a great deal more complex. How could it be any more complex? Are there going to be 3 ways onto the beach instead of only 2 on and off? Maybe there'll be an extra option. COVID, things will be a great deal more complex, rapid, noisy, and with a significant increase in social fractures. She is a ray of sunshine, particularly when it comes to questions like confinement, lockdowns, and vaccination, she said with a glint in her eye whilst rubbing her hands. No, I made that bit up. First, to Francisco George, himself a former director of health, he tells Lusa, we have to be prepared now, more than ever, for a new phenomena. There are threats on the horizon, the H5 flu virus, which is circulating mainly in birds and cattle, including dairy cows. Earlier this month, Minister of Agriculture, José Manuel Fernandes, said Portugal had 5 domestic and 4 wild outbreaks of bird flu. Compared to what, I wonder? I don't think these things are... okay, so I'm sounding cynical and suspicious here. According to Francisco George, there is a danger in aviaries and cattle farms where there is contact with humans, but it has been kept under surveillance. If cases of human infection do take place, surveillance measures will have to make way for taking immediate action. But George did not use the word pandemic, favoring more the idea of localized epidemics. You see, I think they work closely with psychologists who say, no, you can't use pandemic. You've got to rebrand it. Otherwise, people just won't take it seriously. You'll lose people. So how about localized epidemic? Yes, that's much better, which would need strict control. The first outbreak of avian influenza caused by the H5N1 occurred in Hong Kong in 1997 and was controlled by the mass culling of 1.5 million domestic birds. A new wave of outbreaks began in 2003, and since 2015, the flu has affected more than 60 species of mammals, including dogs, cats, and pigs. Wild birds carry the virus and have infected sea lions in South America and mink in Europe. They are painting a grim picture here, which I'm sharing with you tonight on the Bad News Briefing as a new experiment here on Good Morning Portugal. Transmission of the virus to humans doesn't happen easily, but when it does, the infection can lead to a serious clinical condition, says Lusa. The fear of mutation of H5N1 appears to have originated from the World Health Organization, an organization that has been pushing in vain for a pandemic treaty since the COVID crisis. Nonetheless, in the first few weeks of this year, 2 people have been reported to have died from bird flu, one in the US and the other in Cambodia. Freitas does not appear to be fixated on bird flu being the greatest threat on the horizon. However, in her view, the greatest threat is the certainty of a new pandemic in which combat will not be perfect. It's impossible, not least because the world is much more complex and there are many more sources of true and untrue information, she tells her interviewers. I'm not sure how much more of this I can take, except maybe the last paragraph. No, I don't want to read that now. I think I've thoroughly upset and depressed myself, which I suppose is the whole point of a bad news briefing. Finances portal currently crashed for going back to the earlier story. Finances portal currently crashed for verifying expenses for tax refunds. Another YouTube channel said that if you get a lawyer to sue the agency who gives your appointment after waiting 90 days, and all of a sudden you get an appointment. Have you heard this, Carl? Yeah, Gilda's view on that is that it's pointless now suing IMA because you're just joining a massive queue of other people who did it to get things moving, and that is now counterproductive. That's her view as I recall it. Maybe get a fresh view. Join us on Thursday night. Talk again to Gilles to see what the current state of play is. Come join us on the Expats Portugal Town Hall on Thursday. I guess they're preparing another lockdown. This is what I thought, JMC. Get your cellars full of toilet paper and wine, you guys. Yet another argument for vegetarianism and veganism, says James. Bird flu. You might have no eggs for a while after they slaughter the chickens, says Lucky Raindrops. Stay away from animals. Job done. Sufficiently afraid and depressed. Okay, I'll leave it there then. Yes, mission accomplished. Thanks, James. I'll see you. I will definitely need some of your counsel and wise guidance in a few minutes' time over on the new support group, basically, where I'll tell you what, let me just tell you what the ground rules are for that before you jump on there, because we're not going to be moaning about taxes, bird flu, or IMA necessarily. What we want to do is actually be helpful to people who are going through things that might, if not spoken about, might become even more difficult, toxic even in their life here in Portugal. So the first go at this, and it is a first draft. The ground rules for tonight at 8:30 will be a light facilitation, confidentiality for sure. What goes on in the group stays in the group. Commitment to the group if that seems appropriate, and maybe locking the group so that we've got the same people who come, who can build up confidentiality and trust with each other. An emphasis on listening more than fixing, and offers of help if they are requested. So we are going to hear people out, whatever your challenges and difficulties are. That's the idea, to hear you out. And any persistent or festering difficulties, we'll listen to what you've got to say. And if you want help and request help, I'm sure that will be available. If you just need to get things off your chest, then do that. So let me just put the link for that. Yes, solution oriented, says James in there. That does seem like a very good start, but I do want to make sure that people get heard as well before we start jumping in. Nothing worse, is there, than when you're just getting something off your chest and people are saying, oh yeah, you know what you need to do, mate? You need to do this, that, or the other. That can follow if necessary. So see you there in a couple of minutes. This is the link. Maybe I need to leave that on the screen for a little bit longer than just suddenly disappearing. I lack money. JMC, I can trump that with I lack money management. That's my big issue that I'm trying to tackle at the moment. But I'm not sure we can do about that. If you're looking for a fix there or a loan, you might have come to the wrong, I don't know, but you may have come to the wrong place on that. So James, you know that link. And the call is open now if you want to jump onto that and just get anything off your chest, check in, have a catch up with whoever else is there. We'll play it by ear. We'll see how it goes on this first session of beef, grief, and relief. And if I end this show too quickly for you to fish the link off the screen, you know where I am on 913-590-303 as well. So see you over there. Thank you for listening here. Should we have a little bit of a palate cleanser? I think we should. This is Rose Betts, everybody. I'm going to play you this, and then I'm going to jump over to Google myself.
This is a song to soothe your soul, to soothe your soul. This is a song you need, you know, to soothe your soul. It'll all be alright in the end, 'cause I'm right beside you, your very best friend. And this is a song to soothe your soul, to soothe your soul. This is a song you need, you know,